Hello and welcome to Unbuilt Giants, a series that looks at the development and demise of some of history's most notable and sometimes bizarre skyscraper projects. The Grand Central Tower, also known by its proposed address of 175 Park Avenue, was a highly controversial and ultimately unrealized skyscraper planned to rise directly above New York City's Grand Central Terminal in the late 1960s and 1970s. Designed by modernist architect Marcel Breuer and backed by British developer Maurice Sardi in partnership with Penn Central, the proposed tower would have soared 950 feet above Midtown Manhattan, dramatically overshadowing the terminal's Beaux-Arts facade. Intended to capitalize on the terminal's valuable air rights, the project aimed to create a companion to the nearby Pan Am building, but would have resulted in the partial or total destruction of Grand Central's historic structure. The proposal sparked fierce opposition from architects, preservationists, and civic leaders, most notably Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, and ignited a legal and cultural battle that reshaped the city's approach to landmark preservation, culminating in a landmark U.S. Supreme Court decision in 1978 that blocked the tower and safeguarded the terminal's future. Grand Central Terminal, one of New York City's most enduring architectural achievements, officially opened to the public in February 1913. Designed in the Beaux-Arts style by the architectural firms Reed and Stem and Warren and Wetmore, the terminal was conceived as both a functional transportation hub and a monumental civic space. Its vast concourse, celestial ceiling, and ornate facade quickly became symbolic of the city's ambition and its growing stature as a global metropolis. Throughout the early 20th century, the terminal bustled with commuters and long-distance travelers, serving as the gateway to New York and a testament to the central role railroads once played in American life. However, by the mid-20th century, the terminal's fate became increasingly precarious. The post-war period ushered in rapid transformations in transportation. The rise of the automobile and the expansion of the interstate highway system, along with the jet age's ascendancy in air travel, dramatically reshaped how people moved across the country. Rail travel, once dominant, began to fade. Suburbanization also played a role as more people moved out of the city and commuted by car, weakening the passenger base that had sustained the terminal for decades. The New York Central Railroad, which owned and operated Grand Central Terminal, was not immune to these shifts. By the 1950s, the company was under growing financial pressure. Declining revenues from passenger rail service, coupled with the high costs of maintaining a massive early 20th century structure in a prime midtown location, made the terminal less viable from a commercial standpoint. At the same time, real estate values in Manhattan continued to climb, and city planning increasingly prioritized vertical expansion. The air rights above Grand Central became a tempting asset, especially to developers eager to build office towers to meet the post-war boom in demand for corporate space. The first proposal came from architect I.M. Pei, working in partnership with prominent developer William Zeckendorf. Their plan was championed by Robert R. Young, then the ambitious and controversial chairman of the New York Central Railroad. Pei envisioned a monumental 80-story skyscraper that would span 5 million square feet, an immense structure designed to eclipse the Empire State Building and claim the title of the tallest building in the world. It was conceived not merely as an office tower, but as a statement of architectural innovation and corporate power, embodying the modernist ideals of efficiency, scale, and futurism. Zeckendorf and Pei quietly revised their original blueprint to an even more audacious design, a 108-story hyperboloid tower, an engineering marvel with a dramatically curved form unlike anything previously attempted in Manhattan. While never formally unveiled to the public, surviving sketches suggest a futuristic silhouette more in line with science fiction than mid-century corporate America. Despite its ambition, the project quickly ran into trouble. Architects, planners, preservationists, and the public voiced alarm at the prospect of such an overwhelming structure rising over Grand Central. Critics warned that the scale of the proposal would dwarf and demean the existing terminal, blocking light, increasing congestion, and further eroding the historic character of the area. Financial realities also caught up with the scheme. Zeckendorf, known for aggressive and speculative developments, was facing difficulty securing adequate funding in a weakening economy. Ultimately, the plan was abandoned before it could reach the approval stage. Around the same time, a second proposal emerged from Alfred T. Fellheimer, a name already deeply connected with Grand Central's past. Fellheimer had served as the lead architect of the original terminal in the 1910s and now returned with a new vision to reimagine its future. His scheme was centered on the construction of a 55-story office tower that would not only dominate the site, but also reconfigure the surrounding streetscape. His design included a rooftop helipad, multiple restaurants, retail spaces, and a vast underground garage capable of accommodating over 2,000 cars. It proposed running both 43rd and 44th Streets directly through the base of the building and redirecting the Park Avenue viaduct so it passed cleanly through the structure, streamlining traffic flow. Fellheimer justified the transformation as a way to alleviate congestion and modernize what he saw as an outdated and obstructive structure. Yet despite his deep ties to the terminal and the urban logic behind his proposal, critics were unconvinced. Preservationists objected to the sheer scale of the changes, while others argued that the scheme prioritized automobiles over architecture. Like Pei's concept, it never moved forward. By 1955, the energy and momentum behind Pei and Fellheimer's grandiose visions began to fade. Zeckendorf, however, was officially named the primary development partner for the Grand Central site. Although his collaboration with Pei lingered for a time, the most radical elements of their plans, especially the hyperboloid design, were quietly shelved. The financial and political environment was simply not conducive to such ambitious construction. In 1958, the railroad adopted a more restrained approach with the Grand Central City project, a development that ultimately resulted in the construction of the Pan Am building. The design, while still large and controversial, was more palatable to both the public and city officials. It was built on the site of the old baggage building, which was demolished in preparation, while the main terminal building remained intact. Completed in 1963, the Pan Am building loomed over Grand Central and soon became a fixture of the Midtown skyline. Though it avoided the complete destruction of the terminal, it drew its own share of criticism for its bulk and architectural bluntness, with many viewing it as a hulking interruption in the city's urban fabric. In January 1968, the City of New York entered into a significant agreement with UGI Properties, Inc., the American subsidiary of Union General Properties Limited, a firm headed by British property developer Maurice Sadi. This agreement involved leasing the air rights directly above the head house of Grand Central Terminal. The lease was structured to last 50 years, with Sadi's company committing to an annual payment of $3 million. The ultimate goal of this transaction was to enable the construction of a towering modern office building above the terminal, an ambitious development project that immediately drew scrutiny due to its location atop a recently landmarked structure. By February of that year, Sadi announced that he had selected the renowned modernist architect Marcel Breuer to design the skyscraper. Breuer, a Hungarian-born figure celebrated for his stark, functionalist designs and his earlier work on the Whitney Museum and UNESCO headquarters, was tasked with envisioning a new structure that would symbolize progress while theoretically coexisting with Grand Central's classical Beaux-Arts style. However, despite Breuer's stature in the architectural world, the announcement failed to quell widespread criticism. Preservationists, city officials, architects, and concerned members of the public voiced alarm that any tower atop the terminal, no matter how refined or respectful in design, would severely undermine the character and visual integrity of the station, which had only been granted landmark status by the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission a few months earlier, in August 1967. In June 1968, Breuer formally unveiled his design to the public. His vision was a 55-story office tower that would rise dramatically above the terminal's main concourse. Standing at 950 feet tall, the tower would exceed the height of the Pan Am building, then the dominant feature of the area, by approximately 150 feet. Breuer's strategy involved cantilevering the bulk of the structure above the terminal, using 4 massive trusses supported by a central core inserted directly through the terminal's former waiting room. This method was intended to preserve the vaulted main concourse below while creating a modern commercial structure overhead. Breuer also proposed removing unsightly advertising and visual clutter within the terminal as part of broader restoration effort. Nevertheless, these concessions did little to mitigate the perception that the plan was a destructive overreach. The reaction from preservation advocates and planning experts was swift and harsh, with many describing the proposal as a grotesque imposition on the terminal's dignified proportions and historical presence. Later that same month, the Penn Central Transportation Company, formed from the 1968 merger of the Pennsylvania Railroad and New York Central Railroad, officially announced its endorsement of the office tower project. The timing of this public declaration prompted further controversy. In response, the New York City Planning Commission, in early July, introduced a counterproposal aimed at curbing development intensity around the city's main transport nodes. This initiative proposed creating special zoning districts around Grand Central Terminal, Pennsylvania Station, and Jamaica Station. Within these areas, new construction would be limited to 80% of what existing zoning laws allowed in order to combat congestion and promote urban coherence. However, by the end of July, political pressure and internal disagreement led the Commission to withdraw its plan as it pertained to Grand Central. In August 1968, the Landmarks Preservation Commission rendered its official judgment, rejecting Breuer's initial design. Despite Breuer's architectural pedigree and claims that the building would respect the terminal's core functions, the Commission ruled that the proposed construction was fundamentally incompatible with the preservation of the landmark's defining features. In September, Maurice Sardi personally met with the Commission in an effort to appeal the decision and salvage the project. Despite this lobbying, the appeal was unsuccessful, and the Commission stood firm in its opposition. Undeterred, Breuer returned in January 1969 with a second, more radical design. In this iteration, the entire 42nd Street facade of the terminal, the most recognizable exterior feature, would be demolished, though the interior main concourse would be preserved. Breuer and representatives from Penn Central argued that the concourse, rather than the exterior, was the most valuable historic component and deserved prioritization. The new design, now expanded to 59 stories, was again presented to the Landmarks Commission during a series of public hearings in April 1969. However, the updated proposal fared no better than its predecessor. The public outcry remained intense, with critics describing the tower as aesthetically inappropriate and historically insensitive, likening it to a funny hat placed atop the dignified terminal building. During this period, Penn Central officials sought to exert political influence behind the scenes. Stuart T. Saunders, CEO at the railroad, approached William S. Paley, chairman of the Urban Design Council and head of CBS, in hopes of persuading Mayor John Lindsay to back the plan. Despite these efforts, political momentum continued to shift against the project. In June 1969, Breuer and Penn Central returned to the Landmarks Commission with a third iteration. This version aimed to address some of the criticism by preserving the original 42nd Street facade and reducing the tower's width. At the same time, the height was increased slightly to 58 stories, allowing for more rentable floor space while shrinking the building's footprint. Even with these adjustments, the Commission remained unpersuaded. On the 26th of August, 1969, it issued a final ruling rejecting both the original and modified proposals. Just days later, UGI Properties filed a legal claim against the City of New York, seeking $8 million annually in damages. The company alleged that the Commission's repeated rejections had effectively blocked development of the air rights, rendering their investment worthless and violating their contractual expectations. The filing marked the beginning of a drawn-out legal and political battle that would ultimately reach the United States Supreme Court. The Penn Central publicly announced on the 2nd of June its intent to sell a significant portion of its real estate holdings surrounding Grand Central Terminal. The centerpiece of this offering was the sale of air rights above the terminal itself, but the sale excluded only the Pan Am building and the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. To manage the transaction, Penn Central retained the services of Kuhn Loeb & Co., a respected Wall Street investment firm, to handle the solicitation of bids, setting a submission deadline of the 15th of October that year. Less than 3 weeks later, on the 21st of June, Penn Central's Board of Trustees revealed they had commissioned the Jackson Cross Company, a real estate appraisal firm, to undertake a comprehensive valuation of the 20-block tract of real estate related to the Grand Central air rights. This appraisal was to provide clarity on the real market value of the properties being offered. While Penn Central optimistically projected the value of the properties at $1.2 billion, external analysts and observers were far less bullish. Market insiders, more attuned to the ongoing real estate trends and the company's precarious legal situation, pegged the actual value between $350 and $450 million, a vast disparity that underscored the company's desperation to monetize its holdings amid mounting losses. On the 15th of October 1971, the bid deadline passed, and Penn Central received a wide range of offers for 21 parcels of Park Avenue real estate. Just 1 month later, on the 15th of November, the trustees disclosed they had accepted bids for only 6 of those parcels. Among the accepted sales were major properties such as the New York General Building, now known as the Helmsley Building, and the Vanderbilt Concourse Building. The remaining 15 parcels were withdrawn from consideration, either due to insufficient offers or legal complications connected to their landmark status, a growing concern in the context of Grand Central Terminal. The issue of the terminal's legal status as a protected historic landmark began to intensify on the 22nd of May 1972 when a critical hearing took place in the New York State Supreme Court. Penn Central, frustrated by constraints placed on its development ambitions, petitioned to have Grand Central Terminal's landmark designation revoked. The argument they put forward was that the designation prevented them from fully utilizing the property, especially the air rights, which they believed could generate essential revenue. The court heard strong opposition from prominent city planners and public officials, who argued that removing the designation would endanger not only the terminal, but also the broader principle of preservation within New York City. That legal challenge lay dormant for a time but re-emerged with greater intensity on the 21st of December 1974, when Penn Central, now working closely with its development partner, filed a new lawsuit to overturn the landmark designation. This renewed push set the stage for one of the most significant preservation battles in American urban history. On the 21st of January 1975, Justice Irving H. Sapol of the New York Supreme Court issued a landmark ruling in favor of Penn Central. He declared that the landmark status imposed by the city's Landmarks Preservation Commission created an unfair economic burden and amounted to an unconstitutional taking of private property without just compensation. This ruling effectively stripped Grand Central Terminal of its legal protections as a historic landmark. The decision provoked outrage across the city and galvanized preservationists into action. Just 9 days later, on the 30th of January, renowned architect Philip Johnson and former First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis held a press conference outside the Oyster Bar in Grand Central to announce the formation of the Committee to Save Grand Central Station. The group, backed by the Municipal Art Society, quickly became the leading force in the fight to restore the terminal's landmark protections and block Penn Central's redevelopment plan. Momentum built quickly. On the 16th of February 1975, Grand Central Terminal was officially listed on the National Register of Historic Places, further reinforcing its cultural and historical value at the national level. 8 days later, on 24th February, Onassis personally wrote to Mayor Abraham Beame, urging him to appeal Justice Sapol's ruling. Her intervention brought celebrity attention and immense public pressure to the preservation effort, drawing support from civic leaders, artists, and ordinary New Yorkers alike. The campaign grew louder and more visible in the months that followed. On the 15th of April 1975, a benefit event was staged just outside the terminal, hosted by television personality Dick Cavett. The event featured performances by celebrities and was aimed at raising funds and awareness to support the preservation campaign. By the end of August, efforts extended into the physical restoration of the terminal itself. On the 30th of August 1975, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority initiated a $1 million improvement project to repair, clean, and declutter the terminal, signaling institutional support for protecting and revitalizing the space. A critical turning point came on the 16th of December 1975 when the New York State Appellate Division reversed Sapol's ruling in a 3-2 decision. The court concluded that Penn Central had failed to demonstrate it was unable to generate a reasonable return from the property in its existing condition. The decision restored Grand Central's landmark status and reaffirmed the constitutionality of the city's preservation laws. It was a major legal and symbolic victory, won largely through the sustained advocacy of the Committee to Save Grand Central and the influence of figures like Onassis. The preservation movement continued to grow in the following year. In April 1976, the committee began offering weekly guided tours of Grand Central every Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. to educate the public and deepen support for the terminal's preservation. In July 1976, two powerful symbols of renewal marked further progress. The iconic sculpture of Mercury atop the terminal's facade was illuminated for the first time since 1913, using funds personally donated by Onassis. At the same time, the MTA installed new high-intensity lighting throughout the main concourse, replacing outdated incandescent bulbs and updating the public address system, both enhancing the terminal's functionality and aesthetics. The legal saga concluded in 1978 with a definitive ruling from the United States Supreme Court in the case Penn Central Transportation Co. v. New York City. In a 6-3 decision, the court sided with the city, ruling that the Landmarks Preservation Act did not constitute an unconstitutional taking of property. It confirmed that local governments could impose historic preservation laws without violating property owners' rights, provided those laws allowed for reasonable use and economic viability. The Supreme Court's ruling did more than save Grand Central. It cemented the legal foundation for historic preservation in cities across the United States, ensuring that economic development would not come at the cost of erasing the country's architectural heritage. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and consider subscribing for more episodes coming soon. See you next time.